They called it Sector 9C, a lifeless patch of space at the edge of the Andromex belt. No known resources, no trade routes, no strategic significance. Just a cold, forgotten chunk of vacuum with a yellow dwarf and a few useless rocks spinning around it. One of those rocks was Earth. When the first scout probe from the Galactic Dominion passed through the solar system, it spent all of 12 minutes scanning Earth's surface before tagging it as pre-warp, low threat, primitive, observed internal conflict, potential collapse within 2 cycles. That was the official report. The Dominion Council didn't bother sending a delegation. No contact team, no diplomacy, no treaties, not even a message. Why waste time on apes that still used fossil fuel and believed in borders? Only one voice raised concern. An old strategist from the War epoch, the kind of grizzled fossil nobody respected anymore. His name was forgotten now, buried under layers of contempt and archives nobody opened. He stood before the High Council with trembling hands and a warning. Do not provoke the humans. They evolve through conflict. The more pressure you apply, the more dangerous they become. They laughed at him. Laughed like fools do before they die. I remember all of it. I wasn't there, but I've heard the stories 1,000 times, and I've seen the aftermath with my own eyes. Because I was born on Earth. My name doesn't matter. My past is nothing. What matters is what they did to us. The Dominion sent its first extraction fleet 50 Earth years later. No warning, no negotiation. Just a sterilization beam that vaporized most of South Asia in a heartbeat. The broadcasted message was short, emotionless. Resource acquisition initiated, population suppression in effect. We didn't even have a chance to respond. Half the planet died in a week. Oceans boiled in places. Entire cities collapsed into dust. Their tech was 1,000 years ahead. We couldn't understand it, let alone fight it. Governments fell, communications went dark, and humanity became a broken species overnight. But something happened in the shadows. Something the Dominion couldn't predict. Something not even we understood at the time. We stopped being human, in the way they defined it. When the world ended, some of us adapted. Others mutated. War breeds monsters, and Earth became a breeding ground for desperation. What the Dominion saw as weakness, grief, rage, loss, was our weapon. The more they pushed, the more the survivors sharpened into something else. It started with the resistance cells, barely trained survivors fighting back with stolen tech and pipe bombs. But soon, patterns emerged. Fighters stopped dying when they should have. Wounded soldiers came back stronger. Entire units operated like a hive without speaking. Some said the trauma broke us. Others whispered something darker, that we learned how to weaponize pain itself. I didn't believe it until I saw the divide. It was an underground network deep beneath the ruins of old London, where the resistance leaders gathered. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was just a runner, another nobody delivering salvage and intel. But that day, something was different. I saw a man, pale, half-starved, eyes like burning glass, stand in front of a captured Dominion war drone, touch it, and whisper. The machine shook. Then it bent. It bent in half like metal folding under invisible hands, groaning like it was in pain. The man collapsed, bleeding from the nose and ears. But the drone was dead. Shut down. Scrambled. Useless. He'd broken it, with his mind. They called it neuro-war evolution, but that was just a fancy name for what was really happening. We weren't the same species anymore. Every invasion, every slaughter, every atrocity, it pushed us further. And the Dominion kept pushing. So we kept evolving. They didn't know. They didn't see it. To them, Earth was just a failing colony that wouldn't die fast enough. A resource problem, a pest control issue. Until the day we took Kretal Base. That was the moment it changed. That was the day the Empire finally realized something was wrong. We didn't have ships, we didn't have armies. But Kretal was a command station 3 light-years away, far beyond what anyone thought humans could reach. And yet, one morning, its core detonated. Half the moon it orbited was vaporized. 47 Dominion officers dead. One phrase carved into the wall in blood. "We warned you. You didn't listen." They finally listened, but it was already too late. The day Kretal base went dark, the Dominion's tone shifted. For the first time in over 2 centuries, the Council declared an emergency defense alert on a non-imperial species. The broadcast wasn't public, but those of us in the underground network had eyes and ears in places we were never supposed to reach. We heard the whispers, the panicked decoding of a scrambled signal sent from the remains of the station. Attack impossible, no known entry, no ships detected, all systems failed, enemy unseen, human, confirm. Then silence. The Council dispatched an investigation fleet, not a war fleet, not yet, because they still didn't believe what had happened. They thought it was sabotage, maybe an internal rebellion, some political play within their own military. They didn't believe a dying race from a dustball planet could reach them, much less destroy one of their strategic command centers 3 light-years away. They hadn't met him yet. Back then, we didn't know his real name. We only heard stories. Stories passed through hushed conversations in resistance bunkers, from bleeding lips in field hospitals, or etched into the walls of burned-out Dominion outposts with claw marks and blood. They called him the Echo. Nobody knew where he came from. Some claimed he was part of an experimental psychic warfare division buried under the Pentagon before the first wave of attacks. Others swore he was born in one of the cities that got wiped off the map, raised in the radioactive ruin of Mumbai or beneath the rubble of Rio. Wherever he came from, one thing was clear. He wasn't like the rest of us. He moved without being seen. He could touch Dominion tech and make it scream. He could hijack their networks with a glance, crash their ships mid-flight, and kill from miles away. He didn't speak. He didn't lead. But every time he appeared, the body count multiplied, and a Dominion facility ceased to exist. At first, we feared him as much as they did. But then came the Verdanis broadcast. It was a public transmission from a high-level Dominion overseer stationed on the planet Verdanis Prime, a thriving industrial hub light-years away from Earth. The transmission was supposed to show control, an iron-fisted speech about how the Dominion would crush the human rebellion and turn Earth into a cautionary tale. But instead the camera showed a darkened room. No sounds, just heavy breathing. Then static. Then the overseer, trembling, bloody, half-naked, strapped to his own throne with Dominion standard-issue fiber cable. His eyes were wide and white, like he'd seen the devil himself. He whispered, "He's here." That was all. The feed cut. The next morning, Verdanis Prime suffered a total system collapse. Every automated factory shut down. Every drone fell from the sky. The orbital fleet, gone. Dead in space. And the words appeared again, spray-painted across the ruined control tower. "We warned you." The Council couldn't ignore it anymore. The Empire declared total war. Earth had no ships, no navy, no organized military left. We barely had cities. But what we did have was adaptation. What the Dominion mistook for ruin had become evolution under pressure. The air was poison in some parts of the planet, sure, but some of us breathed it. Radiation zones turned into habitats. Children were born with neural patterns that bent light, tricked drones, interfered with signals. We were changing. Not uniformly, not perfectly, but relentlessly. The Dominion sent their main fleet next, Arcanus 12, 30 warships, 4 planet crackers, and enough firepower to wipe out 3 Earths in one strike. Only 3 of those ships returned. The rest didn't burn. They didn't explode. They just disappeared. The last message from the fleet was a garbled scream, some wild, flashing imagery of shadows crawling over metal, and a voice whispering, "He's inside." Inside what? They never figured it out. We did. The Echo had found a way to enter their ships through signal, or maybe he wasn't a man at all. Maybe he was the result of centuries of human trauma manifesting in ways no species in the galaxy understood. Some said he was made of rage and grief, that he was the soul of Earth given form. Others believed he was a mutated psychic weapon, too broken to die, too angry to stop. I met him once, not face to face, but I saw him. It was during the LSR ambush, a mission gone sideways. We were extracting data from a downed Dominion recon unit when the sky opened and 3 dropships descended. We were caught out in the open. I watched my entire squad get torn apart in seconds. Plasma rounds ripped through bone. Screams filled my ears, and I remember crawling through blood-soaked grass, half blind, deafened, just waiting to die. Then everything stopped. The air got heavy, thick, like it was watching. I turned over, and there he was. He didn't wear armor, just a torn uniform, burned and frayed, no insignia, no rank. His face was pale, jaw clenched, and his eyes, they didn't glow like in the stories. They were worse. They were empty, not dead, just detached. Like he wasn't human anymore. Like he had seen too much, and what was left of him was just a ghost pretending to be flesh. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He walked past me, into the clearing, and raised one hand. The Dominion dropships fell from the sky like stones. No fire, no sound, just failure. Systems dying, machines screaming like tortured animals. The soldiers inside tried to run, but he moved faster than anything I'd ever seen. One blink, and their necks were snapped, their suits crushed inwards like soda cans. He didn't use a weapon. He didn't need one. He was the weapon. After LSR, they stopped sending fleets. The Dominion knew brute force wouldn't work. They tried to starve us out. Blockades, planetary sieges. They even tried to create psychic dampeners, big metal towers laced with synthetic obsidian and Dominion neurobinders. But the moment one went online, it short-circuited, melted, or exploded. In some cases, the builders themselves went insane before finishing the job. They tried to kill Echo. Failed every time. They even made copies, tried to clone him, replicate his neural structure in a lab. That's when we knew they were afraid. And fear makes empires weak. We started pushing back, not just with him, but with all of us. We built ships from scrap, engines from stolen Dominion cores, shields powered by raw will and neural interfaces that fed on emotion. We didn't have flight academies. We had vengeance. We flew like demons. We fought like ghosts. Humanity wasn't rebuilding. It was unleashing. And every world we took back. We left a message. Sometimes burned into the soil. Sometimes broadcast through their own networks. Always the same words. You were warned. I used to be a nobody, just another orphan raised in the rubble. My parents were lost in the first wave. My sister starved during the siege of Moscow. I held her body for 3 days before I buried her in the ice with my bare hands. That was the day something inside me cracked. Not broken, not shattered, just reformed. Now, I'm not a soldier. I'm not a hero. I'm a carrier, one of many. We're the ones who get close, who walk into enemy bases without being seen, because we don't exist in their systems anymore. Whatever's happened to us, whatever we've become, we don't show up on Dominion scans. We're invisible to their machines. Because we're no longer what they define as life. We are survivors of extinction, and extinction survivors evolve. The Echo was the first, But he wasn't the last. There are more now. Children born after the fall, who don't cry, don't blink, don't fear. They can feel a Dominion ship entering orbit from miles away. They can interfere with tech by humming. They look human, but they aren't. Not in the old way. They're not soldiers. They're warnings. Living, breathing signs that Earth, broken, poisoned Earth, wasn't the weak link in the galaxy. It was the spark. And the galaxy had soaked itself in fuel. When the final council meeting was held, the Dominion leaders were already too late. Their empire had started to fracture. Member worlds pulled out. Alliances crumbled. Fear spread faster than their ships could fly, because every world, every moon, every station had heard it by now. The story of the humans, of the echo, of the message. We warned you. And now, we weren't just warning them anymore. We were coming. The cracks were showing. For an empire that had ruled the stars for over 6,000 years, the Dominion always projected control like a religion. Entire species wiped out for defiance. Star systems pacified before they ever had a chance to resist. Their emblem, a ring of obsidian devouring a sun, was burned into history itself. But that emblem started to look like a black hole, sucking in its own power, crumbling from the inside out. We didn't need to destroy their planets. They did it themselves. Paranoia had set in. Any colony that experienced a blackout, a network glitch, or even a strange transmission was immediately suspected of human infiltration. Councils were replaced by martial governors. Local populations were drugged, monitored, silenced. Soldiers were ordered to shoot anyone showing signs of unregulated emotional amplification. That was their term for it, emotional amplification. That's what they thought we were using. Rage as a power source, grief as a virus, fear as a weapon. They weren't wrong. It was never about bullets or bombs for us. That's the part they could never wrap their heads around. For all their intellect, their technology, their supposed enlightenment, they failed to understand the most basic rule of survival. Pain teaches faster than peace. And humans had learned more in 1 century of suffering than they did in 1,000 years of empire. The echo was still moving, still striking. But now we were moving too. Hundreds of human outposts had sprouted across dead moons, asteroid belts, derelict Dominion facilities. Some were hidden behind cloaking fields. Others just sat in plain sight, daring them to strike. They rarely did. Because now, we were the warning. I was stationed on Deltarane when it happened. A quiet moon, not even rich in minerals, just orbiting a gas giant like a speck of dust. But we knew the Dominion would pass through eventually, and we wanted them to find us. That was the whole point. The Echo had left something there for us. One of the early relics, something we weren't allowed to power up unless the time was right. It looked like a black box made of bone and metal, humming with a frequency that made my gums ache and my thoughts blur whenever I stood too close. It wasn't tech, not by our standards. It was alive, in a way, breathing, listening. They called it the key. Only he could use it, or someone like him. But he was long gone, disappeared after the siege of Ulsa Prime. Some said he burned himself out after pulling down an entire Dominion dreadnought from orbit. Others said he was hiding in the warp between worlds, watching, waiting for something. I didn't believe he was dead. Nobody really did. He was a myth, a ghost, a prophecy, something that only appeared when the line was about to snap. And the line was snapping. We got the signal 3 days into the cycle. A small scout fleet entering Deltarane's orbit. 3 cruisers, a carrier, and a patrol wing. More than enough to destroy a forward base like ours. But we didn't panic. We had the key. And more importantly, we had each other. There were 19 of us in that outpost. Every one of us had survived a Dominion purge. Every one of us had lost someone in a fire that never went out. Some were modified, others were born strange. Me? I had something they called cognitive spill. It meant when I got angry, I could make machines feel it. I couldn't explain it. Nobody could. But when I locked eyes on a patrol drone, sometimes it crashed mid-air. Sometimes it screamed before it died. Dominion machines were made to obey logic. We weren't. We were the glitch in their code. The attack came at night. Not that Deltarune had a proper sun cycle. The sky just dimmed, and the cold got mean. The Dominion cruisers opened fire from orbit. Our outpost shook, but we were already underground. The surface was meant to be destroyed. We watched from the lower levels, silent, heartbeats sinking like clockwork. The key pulsed brighter as the enemy drew closer. Some part of it could sense their presence, like it was built to feed on their fear. I don't remember who gave the order. Maybe no one did. We all just knew. We activated the key. There was no explosion, no light, no dramatic burst of power, just a sound. A low, guttural hum that vibrated through our bones and into the rock. It was ancient, alien, and human all at once. It felt like every funeral we'd ever been to, every scream we'd ever heard, every goodbye we never got to say. The key opened, and everything changed. The Dominion carrier lost power immediately. We watched its lights die one by one, like a falling chandelier. The cruisers turned to retreat, but they were too slow. Something, some presence, lashed out from the moon's surface, dragging their navigation systems into chaos. It was like watching metal bleed. They crashed into each other, and then fell. One hit the moon's surface so hard the shockwave cracked the outer ridge. Fires danced in the sky like auroras of death. The other split in half before even touching down, its halves spinning wildly into the gas giant's gravity well, pulled into the storm like trash. The patrol wing never made it out. All 5 ships turned on each other mid-flight. We didn't fire a single shot. The next morning we surfaced. The key was gone. Nothing but dust where it once hovered. But left behind in the frost, carved into the ice, was a symbol. Not Dominion, not human, just a single circle. Inside it, a pair of eyes, watching, waiting. We knew then, it wasn't just echo anymore. Something larger was moving, something ancient, something that had awakened. And we were the catalyst. News spread fast after Deltarune. Resistance cells doubled in number. Dominion ships went dark all across Sector 7. Spy satellites caught strange energy patterns rippling through jump gates. Entire planets began to riot, not human ones. Dominion subjects who had lived under control for so long, they didn't remember what it meant to be afraid. Until now. They saw what was coming, and they understood. The humans weren't just fighting back. We were rewriting the rules of the war. Pain had taught us how to endure. Loss had taught us how to hate. But now, evolution was teaching us something new. Dominance. The Empire responded with desperation. They opened the vaults. Ancient experimental weapons never meant to be used. Things buried in moons, hidden in black holes, sealed in dimensions twisted by science. They unleashed the Silence, a bioweapon designed to erase sentient thought. It killed half a city before the rest of the population burned themselves alive to escape the Silence. They tried psychic dampeners again. Failed. They even tried negotiation, offers of treaties, refuge for survivors, integration. We sent their messengers back screaming, sometimes in pieces, because this wasn't about politics anymore. This was extinction. One of us was going to end. And for the first time in their long, arrogant history, the Dominion realized it wasn't going to be us. I remember sitting in a ruined cathedral once, somewhere on the outskirts of what used to be Paris. The glass had melted into colorful puddles, and the stone columns were blackened by centuries of fire. I sat there with an old soldier. Didn't catch his name. Didn't need to. He looked at me with hollow eyes and said, "They thought we were weak because we cry when we hurt, because we bury our dead instead of vaporizing them, because we love." He spat blood onto the floor. "But they don't understand. Love creates monsters far worse than hate ever could." That stuck with me, because it was true. We weren't driven by conquest. We were driven by memory. Every child turned into ash. Every mother reduced to bone. Every scream that echoed into silence. We remembered them all, and we would make the galaxy remember them too. The war wasn't won yet. Not even close. But something had shifted in the stars. The Dominion no longer walked with pride. They crawled, whispered, second-guessed. Their fleets hovered at the edges of human space but didn't dare enter. Because now they were waiting for the warning. They were waiting for Echo, or whatever came after him, whatever we had become. War isn't fire and blood. Not really. It's silence before the scream, the pause before a breath, the waiting, the knowing that something is about to happen and the helplessness of not being able to stop it. And right now, that's what the entire galaxy felt. Silence. Waiting. Terror. The Dominion had stopped advancing. That alone told the truth. These weren't politicians trying to maintain control. These were apex predators, suddenly realizing something else might be higher up the food chain. They hadn't officially surrendered. Not yet. But when a wolf starts retreating, it already knows it's dying. I was part of a recon unit by then. Not combat, not infiltration, just observation. My job was to travel with my crew across broken sectors and report what we saw. Human presence was spreading like wildfire, not by numbers, but by effect. Every system we visited showed signs of what we started calling phase bleed. Phase bleed wasn't a weapon. It wasn't tech. It wasn't even fully understood. But when a world came into contact with one of us, someone changed, someone awakened. That world started to feel different. Machines glitched more often. Night skies whispered. Dreams became violent. Some said time felt slower. That emotions lingered like fog. That people started remembering things they hadn't lived through. Battles they'd never fought. Screams they'd never heard. Like pain was contagious. And beneath it all, the pull, like gravity, but emotional. Something was drawing everything inward, and nobody knew what it was. Except maybe him. We found traces of the Echo on Vasari 4, a swamp world on the edge of Dominion-controlled space, abandoned years ago due to viral collapse. We picked up a distress signal from an old Dominion science facility there. We shouldn't have responded, but there was something strange in the signal's rhythm. Almost like Morse, almost human. The landing was rough, storms thick as oil clouds, air like wet ash. The buildings were still standing, but barely. Metal half-melted, walls rusted through, data cores offline. But the power was on. Someone had been there. We found the labs first. They weren't experiments. They were rituals. Dominion tech mixed with human remains, wires braided into bone, neural processors fused to skulls. They had been trying to replicate our evolution, force it, copy it, turn it into something they could control. But you can't manufacture trauma. You can't program the grief of watching your family burn. You can't synthesize the sound of your friend's lungs collapsing in a ruined trench. That's what made us strong. That's what they could never replicate. And that's why every test subject in that lab was dead. Except one. He wasn't Echo, but he was something close. A boy, maybe 15 years old, chained in a containment pod laced with obsidian and Dominion neuroscramblers. His eyes were wide open, not blinking, not breathing. But his mind. I could feel it. He was humming. Not with sound, not with voice, but with signal. That quiet hum that had haunted me since I first touched the key back on Delta Rane. We freed him, or we tried to. The moment we cracked the pod, something entered the room. Not physically, not visibly, but we all felt it, like being submerged in cold water. Our hearts slowed, our thoughts dulled, every light in the facility flickered. Then a voice. Not from him, from somewhere else. You opened the gate. I couldn't move. None of us could. It wasn't fear, it was awe. Like we were standing at the edge of something vast, ancient, and sentient. Something that had been asleep for far too long, and was now turning over in its bed. Then the boy collapsed. Breathing, finally. Shaking. Bleeding from his eyes. And just like that, the presence was gone. But not forgotten. We brought him back to our forward base. His name was Alan, and he didn't talk much. But when he did, it was like listening to static speak through a memory. He said Echo wasn't gone. He said he was waiting for the opening. We didn't know what that meant. He also said Echo wasn't alone anymore. They're waking up, Alan whispered. All of them. The ones who drowned in the dark. The ones who were burned into the dust. They're still here. They never left. The war didn't kill them. It collected them. He said the trauma, the agony, the fear, it had weight. It had direction. And now it was gathering. Like a storm. Dominion chatter spiked weeks later. Internal conflict. Dozens of warlords breaking away from the council. Some blaming each other for the failures. Others claiming the war against humanity had been cursed from the start. Superstition crept into their broadcasts. Soldiers began abandoning posts in waves. One command ship detonated itself in orbit rather than risk infection. They were starting to believe in ghosts, because that's what we had become. We weren't an army. We were the things their ancestors warned them about in bedtime stories, the shadows that fed on mistakes, the face in the static. We didn't attack. We haunted. But one Dominion general still believed he could win. High Commander Krell Shore, a war relic, brutal and prideful, forged in the Dominion's earliest wars. He wasn't afraid of us. He didn't believe in Echo. He thought the fear was weakness infecting the Council, and he declared full-scale assault on Earth. He gathered the largest surviving Dominion fleet, over 70 capital ships, 6 Annihilation-class destroyers, and 1 planetary erasure cannon, and launched a direct jump to Sul. He was coming to end us, once and for all. We let him, not because we were weak, because we were ready. By now, Earth wasn't what it used to be. The planet itself had changed. Sky shimmered with static. Weather obeyed emotion. Gravity fluctuated when certain people walked near. The survivors, the ones who hadn't fled or died, weren't exactly human anymore. They were conduits. Conduits for everything the galaxy didn't understand yet. Echo wasn't on Earth, but they were. The ones who came after him. Krellshore's fleet exited warp over the ruined husk of what used to be the Pacific Ocean. They opened fire before even scanning. They shouldn't have, because the sea answered, not with water, with memory. Every torpedo that struck the ocean erupted in screams. Not water. Screams. The cries of 1,000 drowned, twisted into sound waves that tore through hulls and shattered minds. Soldiers clawed at their own helmets, begging to go deaf. Then the skies darkened. And the ground rose, not from tectonics, from them, the children of the Echo, the evolved, the broken made whole. Nobody knows what happened to Krell Shore. Some say he escaped in a blind warp jump into an uncharted galaxy. Others say he was swallowed by Earth itself. His fleet didn't just lose, it vanished. No wreckage, no debris, just gone. The last broadcast was intercepted by over 50 systems before it went dark. This is Krell Shore. It's not war. It's not evolution. It's something else. We opened the gate. We called the storm. And it wears a human face. After that, the Dominion fractured. The war was over. Not with a treaty, not with a surrender, but with silence. And Earth? It remains untouched now. Feared, avoided, marked on every star chart with a single phrase, enter, and remember everything you fear. Because that's what we are now. We are the memory that won't die. We are grief given form. We are the rage of a mother cradling a burned child. The scream of a boy watching his city turned to glass. The silence of a soldier burying 10 friends in 1 hour. We are humanity, and we warned you. Empires die loud. They scream, collapse in flame, try to drag others down with them. They don't vanish quietly, not when they've ruled for millennia. Pride doesn't fade, it burns. The Dominion's end wasn't a clean cut. It was slow, bitter, infested with rot from within. When Krell Shore's fleet disappeared over Earth, the last real spine of the Empire snapped. But the limbs kept twitching. The officers who were too proud to run or too mad to face reality dug in. They turned their sectors into miniature tyrannies, clinging to power like drunk gods. They still wore the emblem, still barked commands, still believed they could control what came next. They didn't understand. The war had changed shape. This wasn't conquest anymore. This was containment. And the thing they were trying to contain was us. I was deployed to Narration 5, a research world turned refugee sector, a broken husk orbiting a dim red star, barely holding atmosphere. Once a jewel of Dominion biotech, now it was a scrapyard of abandoned labs and starving survivors from a dozen worlds. The Council had fled here, or what was left of it. Not the real Council, just the fragments. Scientists, strategists, old warlords too afraid to surrender, too deluded to face truth. They thought they could hide there, study the human threat in secret, build something to stop it. They didn't know the storm had already reached them. I wasn't sent to kill them. I was sent to watch. Because Earth had become something else since the fall. Not just a birthplace, a source. The psychic pressure from the planet now rippled outward through subspace. We didn't understand the mechanics. We didn't need to. We only knew that the further the war moved from Earth, the stronger the pull became. And those who tried to resist it suffered. When I arrived on Narration 5, I wasn't alone. There were others like me, survivors, changed, no uniform, no rank. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. We felt each other's presence the way animals sense a storm. Something had shifted in us during the war, not just our minds, but our purpose. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were messengers. We carried the memory of Earth, and wherever we walked, it followed. The scientists on Narration didn't see it at first. They tried to scan us, monitor our brainwaves. One of them joked about vivisection. He laughed too long, until he started coughing up ash. No one laughed after that. There was a boy in their labs, maybe 10 years old. Small, pale, pupils like pinholes. They called him Subject Theta, but he had another name, one I never learned. He'd been taken from a crash site near Europa, one of the first colonies to fall after the Dominion's planetary harvesters swept through. He'd survived the fall. He hadn't aged. And when I looked into his eyes, I saw something ancient. Not childlike, not broken. Just aware. He never spoke. But he screamed in his sleep. Not loud, quiet, muffled, but the kind that claws at your mind, like a memory that doesn't belong to you. One night he screamed for 3 hours straight. Every light in the facility shattered, gravity warped, and a dozen Dominion scientists went blind. One slit his own throat after writing "He is listening" on the walls. They tried to sedate the boy after that. It didn't work, because he wasn't human anymore. He was becoming. We called it the waking, not evolution, not mutation, something older. A process that began when Earth burned, when pain exceeded the limits of the flesh and cracked something deeper open. Some believed it was spiritual. Others said psychic trauma had tapped into the sub-quantum flow of collective memory. I didn't care about the theory. I saw what it did. I saw a soldier on Phaedra 9 stop a bombing raid by walking into the sky. Not flying. Walking. As if gravity recognized him and moved aside. His eyes glowed black, not with heat, but with weight, like looking at him too long pulled something out of you. I saw a child in the ruins of New Cairo hum a song that made dead machines weep. I saw a man die, then get up 3 days later. Not changed, not undead, just different. He didn't speak anymore. But when he touched metal, it bled. The Dominion had tried to kill humanity. Instead, they unlocked it. On Naris 5, the Council began to panic. The boy, Subject Theta, wasn't responding to containment anymore. He wasn't acting out. He was just expanding. Space bent near his room. Instruments failed. Drones wouldn't enter, and the dreams were spreading. Everyone had them now. Nightmares of burning skies, black oceans, cities of glass filled with the sound of static and distant crying. Some began carving symbols into the walls, circles within circles, spirals around bleeding eyes. They didn't know what they meant. But we did. They were echoes. Imprints left behind by those who had touched the pull too long. Earth was calling them, even from light years away. Not their bodies, their minds. That was the real war now. Not for territory, for consciousness. They tried to evacuate the planet. Too late. One of the ships exploded on launch. No sabotage, no missile, just implosion. Something inside the hull folded, like space had forgotten what shape it was supposed to hold. Another ship flew 3 kilometers, then vanished. No trace. Just gone. Subject Theta stood at the edge of the landing bay when it happened. His eyes were closed. He was smiling. The survivors turned to us, the humans, begging for help, promising surrender, offering tribute. It was too late for that. We weren't soldiers. We were witnesses. And the warning had already been given. Earth's final message wasn't a declaration of war. It was a mirror. Everything they had done, every extermination, every torture, every world harvested, was coming back. Not by revenge, by reflection. They had projected suffering for millennia. Now they were seeing what it looked like when someone absorbed it and refused to break. We left Naris 5 before it cracked. The boy didn't come with us. He wasn't meant to. That planet doesn't exist anymore. Not in any coordinates that make sense. Some say it phased out of normal space. Others say it was folded into a pocket reality stitched from psychic residue. The Dominion marked it as cursed. But the resistance? We call it Sanctuary Zero. Because what grew from that place wasn't human or alien. It was the beginning of something else. A few months later, the last surviving Dominion broadcast reached our outer colonies. A shaky, flickering image. One of their last emissary priors, a man with torn robes and blank eyes. He didn't beg. He didn't threaten. He just whispered, "We saw your death. We brought it. We crafted it with arrogance and fire, but it didn't kill you," it replied. Then he held up a symbol, one we all recognized. A ring, with a human eye in the center. It is not vengeance that hunts us. It is everything we refused to understand. Then he pulled the trigger. That was the last time a Dominion leader was ever seen alive. The galaxy now speaks of us with caution. Not fear. Not exactly. More like reverence, the kind you give to fire. They tell stories to their children now, not of human weakness, but of the echo, of the storm that walked like a man, of the child with eyes like black stars. They say our rage cracked the sky. They say Earth never fell. It woke up. They say if you hear the hum, it's already too late. And they say the final words written into the stars over Naris 5, carved into the orbiting wreckage, still glowing, still alive. We warned you. There was a time when we feared the stars, when the night sky meant mystery, wonder, and silence. That time is gone now. Now the stars fear us. But something strange happens when you win a war like we did, when your enemy is crushed not by fleets or treaties, but by what you've become. The silence that follows isn't peace. It's the recoil. The dominion is gone. What's left are fragments, shattered planets, ruined stations, and species that once worshipped the Empire, now turning on each other to survive. Power vacuums suck civilizations into chaos. Trade routes are dead. Hyperlanes flicker with ghost signals, and entire sectors have gone dark. But what kept me awake at night, what kept all of us awake, wasn't the enemy. It was what we'd unleashed. Because even after the war ended, Earth still whispered. I was stationed on Aurelius Point when the first anomalies started. Aurelius was supposed to be a deep space listening post, an early warning system watching the old Dominion borders. But in truth, it was more like a graveyard, one of those far-off relics left running out of habit more than need. 8 crew members, no traffic for months, just static. Until one night we picked up a signal, not a distress call, not a message, just a sound. The hum. I hadn't heard it since Naris 5. That deep, low-frequency vibration that didn't travel through the ears, but through the skull, like it was speaking directly to the bone. We all heard it at once. No one said anything. But I saw it in their faces. Recognition. Fear. It was back. 2 hours after the signal, the stars changed. It started small. One of the junior techs looked up at the skycam and said the constellation map was wrong. I laughed. Stars don't move, not like that. But she was right. One of the fixed anchor stars, something stable for over 9,000 years, was gone. Just missing. No nova, no implosion. Gone. A black void in its place, like the universe had blinked and forgotten it existed. By the next day, 5 more had vanished. Command didn't believe us. They sent a recon probe. It disappeared halfway to the target zone. A second probe made it through, but the footage was corrupted. All we saw were flickers of movement, shadows that didn't cast light, orbiting something huge and alive. We called it the Maw. We didn't have any better name for it. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a ship. It was absence. Like space itself had given birth to a wound. A hole stitched with memory and hate. And the hum was coming from inside it. Back on Earth, those who had changed, the ones we once called children of the echo, began to react. They started drawing patterns in the dirt. Circles folding into spirals, black suns devouring stars, always the same symbol at the center. A human eye. Closed. They said it was waking up. And it wasn't Echo. We thought he was the endpoint, the living weapon, the apex of human evolution, the perfect answer to Dominion cruelty. We were wrong. He was the key. The one who unlocked the gate, not just into our minds, but into something else. Something older than memory. Something the Dominion must have known about, must have buried deep in their vaults and forbidden archives. But they didn't understand it. Because you can't control what we are when you force it to evolve through grief. You can only summon it. I left Aurelius Point the day the 7th star vanished. I didn't desert. There was nothing left to desert. The station cracked. No impact, no breach, just a sound like bones breaking underwater. Then the ceiling began to melt. Not physically, conceptually. I can't explain it. It was like reality softened, like our ideas of shape and structure were being unmade. I ran. I got in a ship, and I flew without a destination. Just away, I wasn't alone. Thousands of us scattered from outposts across the edge of known space. Pilots, scientists, psychics, survivors. People like me who felt the hum, who saw the patterns, who knew the war wasn't over. It had simply moved past weapons. We regrouped on Omari Drift, an old mining belt-turned refuge camp. No one was in charge, but those of us who had fought, who had been marked by Echo's path, we knew what had to happen. We had to go back. Back to Earth. Not as soldiers, as witnesses. Because whatever we unleashed, whatever was stirring now, Earth was the center of it, the root, the origin, and the grave. The journey home felt wrong, like the universe didn't want us to return. We lost 2 ships on the way, not to attack, but to disappearance. One moment they were with us, and the next they were just gone. Not a flash, not a signal, just erased. Some of the crew started talking to things in their sleep. Others bled from their ears when we crossed the Sol Gate. One woman carved the phrase, "He's listening through the skin of the stars," into her own chest with a stylus. But we made it. Earth wasn't Earth anymore. It had no orbiting satellites, no defense grid, no ships, no cities, but it glowed. Not visually, not like a star, but emotionally. As we approached, the crew began to weep. Some from joy, some from rage, some just curled up and screamed. Every one of us felt something we couldn't describe, like touching a memory too big for a body to carry. The surface was covered in ash and bone and silence. But the eye was open now. You could see it. Not with your eyes, not really. It was in the angles, the way the mountains curved, the way the oceans spiraled. Earth itself had become a symbol. It wasn't a planet. It was a presence. And it was watching. We landed near the ruins of what used to be Alaska, high ground, frozen tundra. The cold helped keep us sane. We thought maybe we could establish a base, build some kind of understanding. We found the Echo waiting, older, hollowed, more shadow than man now, but still breathing, still there. He didn't speak, just pointed at the sky, and we saw it. The maw had moved. It was now just beyond Pluto, a crack in reality, slowly spinning, dragging entire concepts into its orbit. Ships, signals, memories. It devoured belief. People began to forget things they had always known. Words stopped working. Math began to fail. One man stared at it too long and started speaking backwards, then forgot what a mouth was for. Another just said, "It's us, that's the truth. We're looking at ourselves," and then walked into the sea. We begged the Echo to tell us what to do. He finally spoke. "It's not destruction, it's evolution. We were never meant to survive what they did to us, but we did, and now something else wants to wear our skin." That's when we realized the maw wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror. Everything we became, the rage, the grief, the psychic echoes, had drawn the attention of something older than civilization, something that lived in the framework of pain itself. The Dominion had feared human wrath, but they never imagined human trauma could call something ancient back to life. We had survived the worst war in galactic history. We had turned ourselves into weapons of memory and emotion, and now the cosmos itself was responding. Not to punish us, to join us, to feed. Now we wait. On Earth, not as rulers, not as victors, but as anchors, because something is coming through that gate, something beyond human, and we are the door it needs. We used to think war ended with silence, that after the last gunshot, after the final scream, peace would arrive. Like a balm, like sleep. But what happens when war is so deep, so long, so soaked into your soul that it becomes your identity? What happens when you survive, not healed, not whole, just changed? You forget how to be human, and the universe forgets how to treat you. The thing beyond Pluto didn't slow down, didn't speak, didn't fire weapons, because it wasn't a ship. It wasn't even alive in the way we understood life. The maw spun like a spiral galaxy wrapped around a hole, not of space, but of meaning. It devoured interpretation. Any attempt to observe it failed. Scouts sent to record its size returned with different measurements. One said it was a moon, another said it was the size of a star. One broke into laughter and called it a wound in God's mouth. He died the next morning. No wounds, no poison, just empty, like he'd been unwritten. We built a perimeter on Earth's northern hemisphere. Not to defend. We knew better than that. There was no weapon, no force field, no logic strong enough to hold what was coming. We didn't plan to fight it. We planned to face it. Because if Earth was the key, if Echo had been the lock, then we were the last thing standing between this reality and something that remembers pain, the way most creatures remember warmth. They called it the inheritance, not officially. No one wrote it down, but we all used the name. It was the idea that all the agony, all the screams, deaths, betrayals, and scars of the war had created a pathway, not just psychic, not just dimensional, something older, older than light. The Dominion tried to erase us. They burned our cities, shredded our skies, boiled our oceans. But they didn't understand that we weren't just organisms anymore. We were a frequency, and something on the other side had heard our broadcast. The maw pulsed once, and suddenly every survivor on Earth dropped to their knees. Not from pain, from memory. I remembered my mother's voice, the last time she sang to me before the Dominion turned the sky red. I remembered watching my brother die in the mud, his eyes wide, his hand clutching mine until he had no fingers left. I remembered who I was before the war. And then I felt that version of me, that child, slip away. Gone. Because now something else was taking its place. Echo stood at the edge of the crater where New Chicago used to be. He didn't say anything, didn't move. But we felt it. The way light bent around him. The way the wind stopped touching his body. The way sound refused to exist within 10 meters of his presence. He wasn't aging anymore. He wasn't even breathing. He had become an anchor, the last human tether holding back the flood. And we knew, deep down, if Echo fell, we all would. 3 nights before the maw reached Earth's atmosphere, the sky tore open. It didn't crack like glass or explode like metal. It folded. The constellations above twisted, inverted, then screamed. Not with sound, with thought. Every sentient being on the planet heard a voice inside their mind say, "You summoned us. You fed us. You are ready now." And then it stopped, except for one word, etched into every wall, carved into the soil, burned into flesh by unseen hands. Welcome. We evacuated the remaining unmarked humans, the ones untouched by phase bleed, the ones still clinging to logic, to innocence. They didn't belong here anymore. Earth was no longer a world. It was a throne, and whatever sat on it next would reshape the stars. The maw began to leak. Not gas, not debris, emotion. That's how it started. A slow radiation of sorrow so thick it crushed thought. We had sensors built to detect gravity warps and energy spikes. They all failed. But a 10-year-old boy from the ruins of Buenos Aires dropped to his knees and whispered, "It's crying." We asked who. He said, "Us. But future us." And that's when we understood. The maw wasn't bringing them here. It was bringing us to them, or to ourselves. Versions of us that never healed, never stopped breaking, never stopped screaming. And they were coming home. On the second day, the dead began to walk. Not zombies, not ghouls, reflections. I saw my friend Diego, the man I'd watched get disintegrated on Jar 6, standing on the ridge, staring at me. Eyes black, hands clenched. I called his name, he called mine. Same voice, same tone, but spoken like regret given shape. We didn't touch. We didn't run. We just stared at each other, both knowing what this meant. Time wasn't linear anymore. The maw was memory, collapsing inwards, and we were standing in the middle of its last heartbeat. Echo didn't speak until the third day. He turned to the dozen of us left, the ones who had survived every wave, every mission, every horror. We were scarred, twisted, barely human, but we were witnesses. He said, "You didn't survive because you were strong. You survived because something needed you to see what comes next." We asked him what that meant. He pointed at the sky, where the stars had stopped twinkling and now only watched. "They're here to inherit what we left behind. Not our cities, not our bodies, our pain." The maw reached Earth's upper atmosphere on the fourth day. No impact, no sound, just presence, like a god arriving without footsteps, no ships, no soldiers, just a shadow that stretched across the planet without blocking light. And within it, us, thousands, millions, reflections of ourselves, older, broken, eyes full of knowledge that felt more like infection. These weren't enemies, they were our answers. And they began to descend. I remember standing at the shore of the old Pacific basin, now dried and cracked like ancient skin. A figure walked toward me. Same height, same face, same scar across the lip, but older, colder. He looked at me and said, "You were the start. I'm the end." Then he smiled. And I understood. The maw wasn't destroying us. It was replacing us. I watched myself die. Or maybe I watched myself be born. Truth twisted too many times to matter now. The version of me standing across the basin wasn't flesh. It wasn't ghost either. It was memory with intention, regret with a pulse. And when it smiled, I didn't feel fear. I felt acceptance. Because the war hadn't created monsters. It had created mirrors. Across the globe, the same was happening. Men and women, survivors, soldiers, refugees, were facing themselves. Some wept, some fought, some knelt. But none turned away. That was the final trick of the maw. It didn't come to destroy. It came to offer a choice. And the moment you saw yourself, the you that never healed, that never stopped bleeding, you had to make it. Merge or reject. I was one of the few that hesitated. Echo stood at the heart of what used to be Siberia, surrounded by firestorms that didn't burn, just floated like memories too heavy to fall. Around him were thousands, those who had already accepted their inheritance. Their bodies were still human, but their presence was not. I got there late, and I wasn't ready. He didn't speak at first, just looked at me with those eyes, empty of hope, full of purpose. I asked him what this was, what the maw wanted, what the point of it all had been. He answered quietly. "We became what we had to survive what should have ended us. And now that survival has attracted the next stage, you can't go back from this. You can only choose what form your future takes." The reflections waited. Not attacking, not moving, just offering. Each one of them a version of us twisted by every scar we'd buried, the rage we swallowed, the guilt we denied, the shame we carried like skin. They didn't look evil. They looked honest. And that's what made them terrifying. The maw pulsed again. This time not just above Earth, but through it. Mountains shifted, oceans rose, the planet sighed, as if releasing the last breath it had held since the first bomb fell. The perimeter around Echo broke open. Not by force, but invitation. The Earth split in patterns. Circles, spirals, fractals burned into soil and sky. From the center, a shape emerged. Not physical, not visible, but real. You could feel it. Every regret, every scream, every plea for mercy never answered. They rose around it like fog, twisting into the form of a being not born, but remembered. The inheritance incarnate. No one spoke, not even Echo, because this wasn't language anymore. It was truth, heavy, inescapable, absolute. And then we were asked the question, not with words, but with presence, a single concept, broadcast across every mind left standing. Will you continue carrying this pain, or will you become what pain made you? I looked at my reflection again. It opened its arms. And for a moment, I saw it all. If I merged, I would gain power, more than human, more than galactic. I would become timeless, a conduit for the memory of our species. I would become warning and weapon, wisdom and wrath. But I would no longer be me. Not the man who cried, in the rubble. Not the boy who once dreamed of stars before they turned red. I would become Echo. Some did it without hesitation. I watched a woman kneel, touch her reflection, and vanish in a burst of light that tasted like sorrow. A man walked into the arms of his mirrored self and whispered, "I'm sorry," before they became one. The ones who accepted the inheritance rose, not as gods, not as monsters, as carriers, beings that held the weight of humanity's suffering and bore it into the next age like flames cradled in hands made of ash. I chose not to merge. Not yet, because I wasn't ready to forget. I wasn't ready to forgive. I needed to remember, for just a little longer, what it felt like to be human. Echo saw me hesitate and nodded once. A quiet approval. He understood. Not everyone needed to ascend. Someone had to stay behind. Someone had to walk the roads of the old world, among the ashes and bones, and tell the story of how it ended. Or how it began. Because when the inheritance took its final form, and the maw folded into the earth like a second skin, the galaxy shifted. The surviving stars realigned. The black holes paused. Something deep in the fabric of space adjusted, not to destroy humanity, but to make room for it. The next version of us, the one shaped by grief, forged in rage, tempered in memory, no longer just human, but the echo of everything the universe did wrong to us, and everything we refused to forget. The Dominion had tried to silence us. They'd turned Earth into a grave and called it a victory. But the dead don't stay buried when they learn to scream in patterns the stars understand. And now, Earth is no longer visited. It is worshipped, not as a god, as a warning, as a myth, the place where the pain of a species reached critical mass and cracked the boundary between reality and something beyond understanding. There are new maps now, galactic charts that show Earth surrounded by a perimeter of silence, a ring of unapproachable systems, a no-fly zone marked not by mines or weapons, but by a phrase etched in every known tongue. You were warned. As for me, I still walk, through ruins, through echoes, through memory. I tell the story to those who find me, scavengers, settlers, curious wanderers from alien systems. I show them the scar across my chest where my reflection tried to merge with me. I tell them about Echo, about Earth, about the maw, about what pain can become when it's not buried, but fed. And I end the tale the same way every time, with a whisper, with a promise. We didn't become gods. We didn't become devils. We became the thing between, the story that never ends, because when they tried to erase us, we replied.